the world turned to static. Like a broken television screen, that moment replayed in my head, the betrayal a constant, flickering image. The weight of it settled in my stomach, a cold stone that refused to dissolve. They had taken everything. They had laughed, confident in their victory, never suspecting that the storm brewing inside me was just beginning to gather force. If you have a sister who's always been there for you, subscribe now and keep the family love flowing. My laptop wasn't just a device, it was my life. As a freelance architect, every blueprint, every contract, every piece of my professional identity lived within its sleek, aluminum shell. It was a gift from my father when I landed my first major project, a symbol of his belief in me, and a constant reminder of how far I'd come. Mark, my boyfriend of 2 years, knew all this. He knew how much that laptop meant to me. That's why, when he texted me that afternoon, "Don't freak out, I lost your laptop." My ex, Chloe, borrowed it for a presentation. I didn't just feel anger. It was a violation. A deep, gut-wrenching sense of being utterly disregarded. I trusted Mark. Implicitly. We shared everything. Our hopes, our fears, our dreams for the future. He was my rock, my confidant, the one person I thought would never intentionally cause me harm. Chloe, on the other hand, was a ghost from Mark's past, a relationship that supposedly ended amicably but always left me with a lingering sense of unease. She was beautiful, successful, and seemed to effortlessly glide through life, leaving a trail of admirers in her wake. I had met her a few times at social gatherings, and while she was always polite, there was a subtle undercurrent of something. A dismissive glance, a patronizing tone, a way of making me feel like I was somehow less than her. But I pushed those feelings aside, attributing them to my own insecurities. Mark assured me that Chloe was just a friend, that their past was firmly in the past. Now, my laptop, my lifeline, was in her hands. The anger simmered as I reread Mark's text. Lost wasn't the right word. Loaned without my permission was more accurate. I called him immediately, my voice tight with barely suppressed fury. "Mark, what the heck? Why would you let Chloe borrow my laptop? You know how important it is to me." His voice was apologetic, almost childlike. "Babe, I'm so sorry." She was in a bind. Her laptop crashed right before her presentation, and she was freaking out. "I didn't think you'd mind. I figured it was just for a few hours." "You didn't think I'd mind?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Mark, that's my property. My livelihood. You can't just give it away to your ex-girlfriend without even asking me." He tried to placate me, promising to retrieve it immediately, assuring me that nothing would happen to it. But the damage was done. The trust, once unwavering, now had a hairline crack running through it. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to my laptop, to Chloe, to the unsettling feeling that something was terribly wrong. Hours passed. Mark kept sending updates, each one more vague and unsatisfying than the last. "She's almost done with the presentation. Traffic is terrible, I'll be there soon. Just a few more minutes, I promise." The sun began to set, casting long shadows across my apartment. Still no laptop. Still no Mark. The unease grew into a gnawing anxiety, a premonition that something far worse than a simple misunderstanding was unfolding. Finally, around 10 that night, Mark arrived, looking sheepish and exhausted. He handed me my laptop, avoiding eye contact. "Here you go," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry it took so long." I snatched the laptop from his hands, my eyes scanning it for any signs of damage. It looked fine, outwardly. But as I opened it, a wave of nausea washed over me. The screen was different. The background, usually a calming landscape photo, was a stark, black void. And my files. They were gone. All of them. Every blueprint, every contract, every precious memory, erased. What happened? I stammered, my voice trembling. Mark's face crumpled. I don't know, he said, his eyes wide with what looked like genuine panic. Chloe said she didn't touch anything. She just used it for her presentation and then gave it back to me. I didn't believe him. I couldn't. The fury that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted, consuming me in its scorching heat. You're lying! I screamed, my voice echoing through the apartment. You both are lying. She did something to my laptop. She ended my career. Mark recoiled, his eyes filled with fear. Babe, please, calm down. I'll fix it. I promise. We'll take it to a repair shop. We'll recover the files. But I knew, deep down, that it was too late. The damage was irreversible. My trust was shattered. My career was in jeopardy. And the person I trusted most was one of them. The world spun. The accusation hung in the air, thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket woven from betrayal and disbelief. Mark stammered denials, his eyes darting around the room, unable to meet my gaze. He swore he had no idea what Chloe had done, that he would never intentionally hurt me, that he loved me more than anything. But his words were hollow, empty shells that offered no comfort, no reassurance. I wanted to believe him. Desperately. But the evidence was irrefutable. My laptop was wiped clean. My career was hanging by a thread. And the only two people who had access to it were standing right in front of me, their guilt radiating like a heat wave. I ordered him to leave, my voice cold and detached, devoid of emotion. He pleaded, begged for forgiveness, promising to make things right. But I was done. The trust was gone, irrevocably shattered. As the door slammed shut behind him, I sank to the floor, the weight of the betrayal crushing me. Sleepless nights followed, filled with replays of the moment Mark handed me the laptop, his averted gaze, Chloe's smug smile at the party weeks before. Each memory was a fresh wound, a sharp reminder of my naivete. I had been so blind, so trusting, so willing to believe in their lies. Now, I was paying the price. The next few weeks were a blur of frantic activity and mounting despair. I took the laptop to every repair shop in the city, each technician offering the same grim diagnosis. The hard drive was wiped clean, the data irretrievable. My blueprints, my contracts, years of work, gone. Just like that. I contacted Chloe, demanding an explanation, but she feigned ignorance, claiming she only used the laptop for a simple PowerPoint presentation and returned it in the same condition she received it. Her voice was smooth, almost condescending, further fueling my rage. I considered legal action, but my lawyer advised against it, citing lack of evidence and the potential for a lengthy and costly court battle. I was trapped, helpless, watching my career crumble before my eyes. The phone calls from clients stopped coming. The offers for new projects dried up. The savings I had painstakingly accumulated dwindled with each passing day. I started having panic attacks, my chest tightening, my breath catching in my throat. The anxiety was a constant companion, a shadow that followed me everywhere. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. I withdrew from my friends, isolating myself in my apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of my former life. The darkness was closing in, threatening to consume me entirely. Mark continued to call, to text, to show up at my apartment, begging for a second chance. But I refused to see him, to speak to him. His presence was a constant reminder of the betrayal, a festering wound that refused to heal. Every apology felt like another lie, another attempt to manipulate me into forgiving him. And I couldn't. I wouldn't. The pain was too deep, the damage too profound. One evening, staring blankly at the flickering screen of my television, an idea began to form in my mind. A dark, insidious idea, born from the depths of my despair. Revenge. It started as a whisper, a fleeting thought, but it quickly grew into a deafening roar, consuming my every waking moment. I would not let them get away with this. I would not let them destroy my life and walk away unscathed. I would make them pay. I started small, gathering information, piecing together the puzzle of their deceit. I spent hours scouring social media, poring over old photos, reading between the lines of their carefully crafted online personas. I discovered inconsistencies, hidden connections, clues that suggested their betrayal was far more calculated, far more malicious than I initially imagined. Chloe wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was an active participant, a willing accomplice in Mark's scheme. But what was their motive? What did they gain from ruining my career? The answer, I suspected, lay buried deep within their past, a secret that they were desperately trying to protect. And I was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. I started documenting everything, every phone call, every text message, every interaction with Mark and Chloe. I knew that I needed proof, solid evidence that would expose their lies and hold them accountable for their actions. My laptop may have been wiped clean, but my mind was sharp, my memory unwavering. I would not let them erase me. I would not let them silence me. I would rise from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever before. The storm was brewing, and they had no idea what was coming. The silence in my apartment was deafening, amplifying the frantic beat of my own heart. The eviction notice lay on the kitchen counter, a stark white rectangle against the grimy surface, a final, brutal punctuation mark on the sentence that had become my life. I was running out of time, of money, of hope. The walls seemed to be closing in, suffocating me with the weight of my failure. I had lost everything. My career, my savings, my home, my sense of self. I was a ghost, haunting the ruins of my former life. The thought crossed my mind, a dark, unwelcome visitor, attempting escape from the pain. To simply disappear, to let the darkness consume me entirely, to end the suffering once and for all. But even in my despair, a tiny spark of defiance flickered within me. A refusal to be completely defeated, a stubborn refusal to let them win. They had taken so much from me already. They would not take my life. I would not give them that satisfaction. I stumbled to the bathroom, my reflection staring back at me from the mirror, a hollow-eyed stranger with matted hair and gaunt features. I barely recognized myself. This wasn't me. This wasn't the strong, independent woman who had built a successful career from the ground up. This was a broken shell, a victim of circumstance. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shock myself back to reality. I had to fight. I had to find a way to reclaim my life, to rebuild what they had destroyed. I wouldn't let their actions define me. I wouldn't let them break me completely. The crimson sunrise painted the sky with hues of fire and anger, mirroring the emotions churning within me. I stared out the window, watching the city slowly awaken, the streets filling with the hustle and bustle of daily life. A life that I was no longer a part of. A life that I desperately wanted back. I had spent weeks wallowing in self-pity, paralyzed by fear and despair. But that was over. It was time to take action. It was time to fight back. I started small, making a list of everything I had lost, everything they had taken from me. My career, my reputation, my financial security, my peace of mind. It was a long list, a daunting reminder of the magnitude of their betrayal. But I refused to be intimidated. I would reclaim every single item, one by one. I started researching Mark and Chloe, digging deeper into their past, searching for any weaknesses, any vulnerabilities that I could exploit. I discovered that Chloe's seemingly perfect life was built on a foundation of lies and deceit. Her successful career was the result of stolen ideas and ruthless ambition. Her charming personality was a carefully constructed facade, masking a cold and calculating heart. And Mark, the seemingly innocent bystander, was secretly drowning in debt, desperate for money and willing to do anything to get it. Their weakness was their secrets, the lies they had so carefully crafted to protect their fragile egos and their ill-gotten gains. And I was determined to expose them. I sold what little valuables I had left, a watch my grandmother gave me, a ring from a past relationship, anything that could bring in a few dollars. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy a cheap burner phone and a prepaid internet card. I needed to disappear, to become untraceable, to operate in the shadows. I spent hours online, learning about cybersecurity, data encryption, and anonymous communication. I knew that I was playing a dangerous game, but I was willing to take the risk. I had nothing left to lose. I started creating fake online profiles, infiltrating their social circles, gathering information from their friends and acquaintances. I became a ghost, observing their every move, listening to their conversations, learning their secrets. The more I learned, the more I realized the depth of their depravity. They weren't just malicious, they were calculated, manipulative, and utterly devoid of remorse. Their actions had destroyed my life, and they didn't care. In fact, they seemed to revel in it. That realization fueled my rage, hardening my resolve. I would make them pay. Not with physical violence, but with something far more devastating, the truth. I would expose their lies, reveal their secrets, and watch their carefully constructed world crumble around them. I would become their worst nightmare, the ghost that haunted their every waking moment. The hunter had become the hunted. And the game was just beginning. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without the weight of despair crushing my chest. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I knew that I would succeed. I would reclaim my life, my career, my reputation. And I would make Mark and Chloe pay for what they had done. The spark of defiance had grown into a raging fire, consuming my fear and replacing it with a cold, unwavering determination. The victim was gone. In her place stood a planner, a strategist, a force to be reckoned with. They had awakened a sleeping giant. And they were about to regret it. The night was dark, but within me, a new dawn was rising. A dawn of justice, of revenge, and of ultimate liberation. I became a ghost in their world, a silent observer documenting every flaw, every lie, every carefully constructed facade. I smiled when Mark texted, pretending I was still heartbroken, still vulnerable. "I miss you," he'd write. "Can we talk?" And I'd reply with a single tear emoji, playing the part of the wounded lover, all while meticulously screenshotting every message, archiving every interaction. Chloe, emboldened by her perceived victory, started posting more frequently on social media, flaunting her success, subtly mocking my misfortune. Each post was a nail in her coffin, a piece of evidence I carefully catalogued. I used a virtual private network, VPN, and a series of fake social media accounts to monitor their online activity without raising suspicion. I even managed to get close to one of Chloe's coworkers, pretending to be a sympathetic ear, subtly fishing for information about her past. It was a slow, painstaking process, but with each new piece of information, the picture became clearer, the path to my revenge more defined. One day, I almost blew my cover. Mark showed up at my doorstep unexpectedly, a bouquet of roses in his hand, begging for forgiveness. I almost slammed the door in his face, but I knew that would be a mistake. I needed to keep him close, to maintain the illusion of vulnerability. So, I let him in, forcing myself to listen to his empty apologies, his hollow promises. I even allowed him to hold me, to comfort me, all while secretly recording the entire conversation on my burner phone, hidden in my pocket. Later, as I listened to the recording, I noticed something odd in the background noise, a faint, almost imperceptible beeping sound. It sounded like a security alarm. I cross-referenced the date and time of the recording with local crime reports and discovered that Chloe's office had been burglarized that very night. The timing was too coincidental. I dug deeper, using my online skills to access police reports and security camera footage. And there it was, clear as day, Mark, sneaking into Chloe's office in the middle of the night, disabling the alarm, and stealing a file from her computer. The file was labeled Project Nightingale, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that it held the key to everything. Obtaining that file became my obsession. I knew I couldn't risk breaking into Chloe's office myself. The police would be watching closely, and I couldn't afford to get caught. So, I decided to play a different game. I created a fake email address, posing as a disgruntled employee of Chloe's company, and sent an anonymous tip to the police, providing them with the date, time, and location of the burglary, as well as a detailed description of Mark. I included a copy of the security camera footage, anonymously uploaded to a file-sharing site. Within days, Mark was arrested. The news spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through Chloe's carefully constructed world. She was furious, humiliated, and desperate to distance herself from him. I watched with satisfaction as her carefully crafted facade began to crumble. But Mark's arrest was just the beginning. Project Nightingale was the real prize. I needed to find out what was in that file, and I needed to do it fast. I knew that Chloe would be doing everything in her power to protect it, to bury it, to make it disappear. So, I decided to use her own ambition against her. I knew that Chloe was obsessed with getting promoted, with climbing the corporate ladder. She craved recognition, power, and control. And I knew exactly how to exploit that weakness. I created another fake online profile, this time posing as a headhunter from a rival company, offering Chloe a lucrative job opportunity. The only catch? She needed to provide a sample of her work, something that showcased her skills and her creativity. I specifically requested Project Nightingale, knowing that she wouldn't be able to resist the temptation to impress me. To my delight, Chloe took the bait. Within days, she sent me a copy of the file, eager to prove her worth. I downloaded it immediately, my heart pounding with anticipation. The file contained a detailed business plan, outlining Chloe's strategy for stealing my blueprints and sabotaging my career. It was all there, in black and white, the emails, the text messages, the financial records, the evidence of their conspiracy. I couldn't believe it. They had been planning this for months, meticulously plotting my downfall, reveling in my suffering. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted, consuming me in its scorching heat. But this time I didn't let it overwhelm me. I channeled it, focusing it, using it to fuel my revenge. I knew that I had everything I needed to expose them, to destroy their lives, to reclaim my own. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I was so close to finally getting justice. But I knew that I couldn't act rashly. I needed to plan my final strike carefully, to ensure that it was precise, devastating, and irreversible. I spent days poring over the evidence, consulting with my lawyer, and crafting a strategy that would leave them with no escape. The storm was brewing, and it was about to unleash its full fury. I uploaded the Project Nightingale file, along with all the other evidence I had gathered, to a secure, anonymous website, accessible only with a specific encryption key. I then wrote a detailed account of their betrayal, outlining their conspiracy, their lies, and their malicious intent. I included screenshots of their emails, transcripts of their text messages, and copies of their financial records. I made sure that everything was meticulously documented, irrefutable, and damning. Finally, I wrote an email to Chloe's boss, to the police, and to several media outlets, informing them of the website and providing them with the encryption key. I hit send, and then I waited. The clock was ticking. The game was about to begin. I knew that they would try to deny it, to discredit me, to silence me. But I was ready for them. I had anticipated their every move, and I had a countermeasure for every possible scenario. I had spent months preparing for this moment, sacrificing everything, risking everything, for the sake of my revenge. And now, it was finally time to see it through. The air crackled with anticipation, the silence broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. The world was about to change. And I was ready to watch it burn. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the hum of my ancient laptop as it uploaded the files. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the quiet dread that was slowly creeping in. Had I done enough? Had I left any loose ends? Doubts gnawed at the edges of my resolve, whispering insidious questions in my ear. What if they managed to suppress the story? What if they twisted the narrative, painting me as a scorned lover seeking revenge? I pushed the thoughts away, forcing myself to focus on the meticulous planning, the countless hours of preparation. I had covered my tracks, encrypted my communications, and left no trace of my involvement. I was a ghost, a phantom, a whisper in the wind. They would never see me coming. A sudden news alert flashed across my screen, breaking, prominent executive accused of corporate espionage. My breath hitched. It had begun. I clicked on the link, my eyes scanning the article, devouring every word. The story was unfolding exactly as I had predicted. The police had launched an investigation, raiding Chloe's office, seizing her computer, and questioning her colleagues. Mark, already in custody for the burglary, was now facing additional charges related to the stolen blueprints. Their carefully constructed world was collapsing around them, brick by painful brick. I watched with a detached sense of satisfaction, the culmination of months of planning finally coming to fruition. But even as I reveled in their downfall, a small voice whispered in the back of my mind, this was just the beginning. The real test was yet to come. The next few days were a blur of media frenzy and legal maneuvering. Chloe vehemently denied the allegations, claiming that she was the victim of a disgruntled employee seeking to tarnish her reputation. She hired a high-powered attorney, a master of spin and manipulation, who immediately launched a counter-offensive, attempting to discredit the evidence and portray me as a vindictive liar. The media ate it up, the narrative shifting from corporate espionage to a salacious tale of betrayal and revenge. I watched with growing frustration as the truth became obscured by a cloud of misinformation and half-truths. I knew that I couldn't remain silent any longer. I had to find a way to break through the noise, to present my side of the story, to expose their lies for what they were. I contacted a journalist, a respected investigative reporter known for her integrity and her commitment to uncovering the truth. I sent her a copy of the Project Nightingale file, along with all the other evidence I had gathered, and asked her to investigate. She agreed, promising to dig deep and expose the truth, no matter where it led. I waited, anxiously, for her story to break. Days turned into weeks, and still nothing. My hope began to dwindle, replaced by a gnawing fear that I had failed, that they had managed to silence me once and for all. Then, one morning, I received a message from the journalist. "I'm ready," it read. "The story will be published tomorrow." A surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins. This was it. The moment of truth. I braced myself for the storm that was about to erupt. The article was a bombshell, a meticulously researched and powerfully written exposé that laid bare the full extent of Chloe and Mark's betrayal. It detailed their conspiracy to sabotage my career, their theft of my blueprints, and their manipulation of the media. It included excerpts from the Project Nightingale file, as well as interviews with former colleagues who corroborated my story. The article went viral, spreading like wildfire across the internet, igniting a firestorm of outrage and condemnation. Chloe's career imploded overnight. She was fired from her job, ostracized by her colleagues, and publicly shamed. Mark, already facing serious criminal charges, was now facing additional scrutiny for his role in the conspiracy. Their carefully constructed world had crumbled into dust, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. I watched with a sense of grim satisfaction as their lives unraveled, the consequences of their actions finally catching up with them. But even as I reveled in their downfall, I knew that my revenge was not yet complete. There was one final piece of the puzzle that needed to be put in place. One final act that would seal their fate forever. And I knew exactly what it was. I knew that Chloe, despite her outward show of defiance, was secretly terrified of one thing: her father. He was a powerful and influential man, a self-made millionaire who had built his empire from nothing. He had always been her biggest supporter, her most ardent defender. And he had always held her to an impossibly high standard. I knew that if he ever discovered the truth about her actions, he would disown her, cutting her off from his wealth and his influence. And that, I realized, would be the ultimate revenge. To take away everything that she valued most, to leave her with nothing but the consequences of her own choices. So, I decided to send him a copy of the article, along with a personal letter, detailing the full extent of her betrayal. I knew that it was a risky move, that it could backfire spectacularly. But I was willing to take the chance. I had nothing left to lose. I carefully crafted the letter, choosing my words with precision and care. I didn't want to appear vindictive or spiteful. I simply wanted to present the facts, to let him draw his own conclusions. I explained how Chloe and Mark had conspired to destroy my career, how they had stolen my blueprints, and how they had lied and manipulated their way to the top. I included copies of the emails, the text messages, and the financial records that proved their guilt. I ended the letter with a simple plea: "Please, sir, I urge you to consider the evidence carefully. Your daughter has done terrible things, and she needs to be held accountable for her actions." I sealed the letter, addressed it to Chloe's father, and dropped it in the mail. And then I waited. The waiting was the hardest part. I paced my apartment, unable to sleep, unable to eat, consumed by anxiety and anticipation. I knew that the letter could change everything, that it could be the final blow that would crush them completely. But I also knew that it could be a complete disaster, that it could galvanize Chloe's father into action, turning him into my enemy. I tried to prepare myself for the worst, but deep down, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. A hope that justice would finally be served, that they would finally be held accountable for the pain and suffering they had caused. Days turned into weeks, and still no word. I started to lose hope, convinced that my plan had failed. Then, one morning, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Hello?" I said, my voice trembling. "Is this my name?" a deep, authoritative voice asked. "Yes," I replied. "This is Chloe's father," he said. "I received your letter." My heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment of truth. "I want to meet with you," he said. "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" The next morning, I found myself standing in the opulent lobby of his skyscraper office, the kind of place that screamed wealth and power. The receptionist, a woman who looked like she'd been sculpted from ice, eyed me with undisguised disdain before announcing my arrival. Moments later, I was ushered into his office, a vast expanse of mahogany and glass overlooking the city. He was a formidable man, radiating an aura of authority that could intimidate even the most seasoned executive. He gestured for me to sit, his eyes piercing, assessing. "I've read your letter, my name," he said, his voice a low rumble. "And I've read the article. I've also done my own investigation. It seems my daughter has made some questionable choices." I braced myself, waiting for the storm to break. But instead of anger, I saw something else in his eyes: disappointment. "I built my company on integrity, on honesty," he continued. "I taught my daughter those values. Clearly, I failed." He paused, his gaze hardening. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing out." I recounted the entire story, from the moment Chloe stole my blueprints to the moment I sent him the letter. I held nothing back, laying bare the full extent of their treachery. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he sat for a long moment, staring out the window. Finally, he turned back to me, his eyes filled with a cold fury. "Thank you, my name," he said. "You've shown me the truth. My daughter will face the consequences of her actions." He stood up, signaling that our meeting was over. As I walked out of his office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. I had no idea what he was planning, but I knew that it wouldn't be pleasant. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within days, Chloe was disowned. Her father publicly denounced her actions, severing all ties and stripping her of her inheritance. The financial support, the connections, the lavish lifestyle, all gone. She was left with nothing but the clothes on her back and the crushing weight of her own mistakes. Mark, facing a mountain of legal troubles, turned on her, blaming her for everything. Their alliance crumbled, replaced by bitter recriminations and mutual accusations. They were both consumed by their own self-destruction, their lives spiraling out of control. I watched from a distance, the architect of their downfall, the silent observer of their suffering. It was a grim spectacle, a cautionary tale of ambition, betrayal, and revenge. The justice I craved had arrived, not in a sudden, explosive burst, but in a slow, agonizing burn. They had tried to end me, to erase me from existence. Instead, they had ended themselves. Their reputations tarnished, their careers ruined, their relationships shattered. They had lost everything. The news reached me in fragments, whispers carried on the wind, Chloe reduced to living in a dingy apartment, struggling to find work, haunted by the shame of her past. Mark, facing prison time, desperately trying to cut a deal, willing to betray anyone to save his own skin. Their faces, once beaming with confidence and arrogance, now etched with desperation and regret. I felt a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction, certainly, but also a tinge of sadness. I had achieved my revenge, but at what cost? Had I become the very thing I hated? Had I allowed their darkness to consume me? I thought about the countless hours I had spent plotting my revenge, the sacrifices I had made, the risks I had taken. I had dedicated my life to this, allowing it to consume me, to define me. And now that it was over, I felt empty. The void they had created in my life had been filled, not with joy or happiness, but with a cold, hollow satisfaction. I went back to my old blueprints, the designs they had stolen, the dreams they had tried to crush. I started working again, slowly, painstakingly, rebuilding my career, reclaiming my life. It wasn't easy. The scars of their betrayal ran deep, and the memories of their actions continued to haunt me. But I refused to let them win. I refused to let their darkness define me. I would emerge from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. One day, years later, I saw Chloe's name in the news. She had started a small nonprofit organization, dedicated to helping victims of corporate fraud. It was a far cry from the high-powered executive she once was, but there was a quiet dignity in her face, a sense of purpose that had been missing before. I didn't reach out to her. I didn't forgive her. But I acknowledged her transformation, her attempt to atone for her past sins. Mark, on the other hand, remained a cautionary tale, a symbol of greed and corruption. His name was synonymous with scandal, a constant reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's a primal instinct, a desperate attempt to restore balance to a world that has been shattered. It's a dark path, one that should be treaded with caution. But sometimes, it's the only path left. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.